With Pilates, we see people booking those reservations time and time again. I definitely think there's a big social media influence. There are so many influencers now who are making fitness seem more accessible. I think the reason that we've seen body scans go up a lot on ClassPass is number one, people are interested in this more personalized data about themselves. But number two, that more and more studios are bringing that equipment in for people to be able to access that type of service.
Welcome to this week's episode of L.I.F.T.S, a podcast that explores new trends and deep ideas shaping the health, fitness, and wellness industry. Today, we've got a conversation that we hope will leave you informed, inspired, and thinking about things in a new way. And I'm here with my co-host, Mo. Mo, what's been on your radar this week?
Hey, Matthew. Well, I just got back from CES in Las Vegas, and I'm now in Dallas, Texas, at a different event. And I know we're going to do a different episode on CES to cover that, but I've got a lot on my mind. I mean, a lot of innovation. It's the new year. This might be our second podcast, I think, of the new year as well. And I'm excited to introduce Kinsey Livingston. So Kinsey and I met recently, I think it seems like it was relatively recently, in Sydney, Australia. She is the VP of Sales at Mindbody and ClassPass, and she actually came from ClassPass. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about that, Kinsey. But ClassPass does its annual report, which it's been doing for the last couple of years. It's highly informative, and it provides a ton of valuable insights into what's kind of happening in not just the boutique fitness world, but in big box, in modalities and preferences. And so it's been a tool and resource that I know we internally at SweatWorks have leveraged for the last couple of years, and kind of informs how we're thinking about what happened in the past year and what's coming in the future. So when I saw the latest version get released, I had a chance to meet Kinsey, and we actually, I think we were on a panel together at Beyond Active, which was a lot of fun. I said, hey, it would be great to have her on and have her walk through the report. So Kinsey, welcome to your first time on L.I.F.T.S.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad we could make the time difference work.
I'm glad too. Now you recently relocated to Sydney, correct?
I did. I moved to Sydney about 4 months ago from Missoula, Montana.
And
So
and
Very good.
I guess
different climate.
for people that don't know, walk us through, briefly the history of ClassPass and Mindbody, and kind of what is coming in 2025.
Absolutely. Well, my personal history at ClassPass is that I started as the head of sales back in 2018. And, that was a really, really exciting time where ClassPass was expanding into all different parts of the world. And we were launching new countries. I think my second week on the job, I flew out to Hong Kong to launch ClassPass in Hong Kong. And then, as we all know, a couple of years after that, COVID hit, which was a crazy time in the industry. And then, as we were sort of rebuilding from COVID, we struck up a partnership with Mindbody. I mean, they were one of our biggest partners. We had an integration with them, and it was a great relationship for many, many years. And then Mindbody acquired ClassPass a few years ago. So since then, we've been really trying to tell the story of why we're better together, and why it's such a seamless relationship for businesses, studios, wellness experiences, big box gyms to work with us as mutual customers. So it's been a very fun ride. I was overseeing the ClassPass and Mindbody sales and account management teams back in North America for several years, and moving out to the APAC region has been a really amazing experience. And the teams here are incredible, and the businesses here are incredible. But definitely noticing some different trends here in the Asia Pacific region as opposed to North America, and especially with the franchise businesses growing and booming extremely fast.
Well, I think that's a good place to start. We actually, I was just looking on our YouTube channel, and we did an interview with a lady called Sherry Castelli 3 years ago, and we talked through the report then, which is a pretty interesting listen. And there was definitely a lot of stuff that that you were able to share at the time about what was happening in the boutique fitness market. And I thought the bulk of our conversation today is going to be around the report you've just released reviewing 2024. But I thought just to start, it would be good to see if you could shed some light on the size and the scope of the research behind this report, and in particular, how many users and reservations were analyzed to produce these insights, and to what extent does some of the data provide user demographics such as age? Because when I was looking at some of the findings, it was, I certainly kind of asked some questions around, how does that skew by demographic, because there was definitely some things that I wouldn't have expected when I saw the report.
This report is looking at ClassPass reservations from October 2023 through October 2024. So it's about a 12-month time frame. There are over 248 million all-time reservations worldwide as of October 2024. So pretty wild. And we have over 2 million ClassPass users that this report is drawing from all around the world. So we're in over 30 countries at this point, and it's pretty amazing to see. I mean, this is more general. We do have sort of a world breakdown as well, some trends in different markets around the world. But overall, this is going to be our all-time reservations.
Are your members frustrated by long lines for squat racks? Equipment like squat racks are in high demand. There's a new solution that will allow your clients to train all the major muscle groups, reduce wait time, and improve your overall gym's efficiency. Curious to know more? Then contact us today.
Something that was interesting, I think, and this might have been the first year which I saw that, but Pilates was #1 as the top 10 workouts for the year. And the report said that it's 84% increase over 2023. What do you think has contributed to the rise of Pilates moving so fast? And do you foresee continuing seeing that growth in the ClassPass ecosystem?
Yeah, it's actually so even though it's grown so much in the past year, as you mentioned, 84% in reservation volume, it's actually our top genre 2 years in a row now, which is pretty impressive. I think prior to that, it was more along the lines of strength training and yoga and cycling, and now those have all taken a backseat to Pilates. And I actually think one of the reasons for this growth is people have really embraced the low impact training. I think there's been a huge, obviously during COVID, Peloton was huge. Everyone had bikes in their basements, in their garages, in their offices. And I mean, I personally had a bike that I ended up selling kind of as we were getting out of COVID. And I was ready to get back into the group community fitness scene and be inspired and motivated by the people around me. But the low impact training trend has really improved. And I think that just goes around to the holistic wellness experience where people are really leaning into self-care. And we do see, when people book Pilates reservations, they'll also book a strength training, they'll also book cycling. But the other trend with Pilates that we see is that when someone on ClassPass books the Pilates reservation, they're typically booking a second Pilates reservation in that same week. Whereas on ClassPass, it's always been sort of a variety center. Like people come to ClassPass to lean into the variety where they can get different types of genres and different types of experiences. But with Pilates, we see people booking those reservations time and time again. So I actually personally agree. Coming from Missoula, Montana, I think we had one Pilates studio there that was really, really small. It had like 5 reformers. So I didn't go there all that much. But now living in Sydney, there are Pilates studios all around. So that's actually my chosen workout now. I go 3 or 4 times a week. And so I feel like I'm actually fitting this trend report pretty well personally.
At the top of the report, you refer to fitness reservations growing by 51% and wellness appointments by 38%. And you explain that it shows an increased commitment to self-care. It sort of raises the question about what's influencing the shift. Is it more lifestyle or social media that's behind it? And in particular, when it comes to the Pilates increase as well, obviously it doesn't sort of provide a direction of what what a conclusion within the report. But personally, as someone that's been involved in this for quite some time, what do you think is the driver for some of these changes? Do you think it's just general lifestyle shifts, or is there a big influence by social media that you refer to?
I definitely think there's a big social media influence. There are so many influencers now who are making fitness seem more accessible. I think that a few years back, boutique fitness was actually pretty intimidating for your normal, individual. And it was people who were either comfortable in a big box gym setting where they can kind of do their own thing. They don't feel like they're being looked at in a group class, or they just feel like they're not necessarily capable of going into a boutique fitness class where, I've never been on a reformer before. I've never done yoga before. Why would I go to my first time class with people that I don't know? So I think a few trends are happening. Number one, the social media influencer is making fitness feel more accessible. There's a lot of influencers out there who are all about body positivity as well. Number two, I think ClassPass specifically is and lots of studios are big on referrals. So bring a friend, right? There's a lot of studios who offer, if you bring a friend, they can have their first class free. And so I think that kind of brings down the barrier and makes people feel more comfortable if they can come to boutique fitness with a friend. I also think there's just a general, like, as I was mentioning before, we created our own home gyms, our own home workouts. People were very much into their home routine during COVID, and it took a few years for people to get back into the boutique fitness scene or into big box gyms. And now we've seen that surge finally sort of reach pre-COVID levels in terms of reservation volume, at least on ClassPass, and many of the direct gyms and wellness studios as well are seeing the pre-COVID levels come back. So I think people are excited to get back to it. And they're excited to be in a community again where it's really inspirational and motivational to be around peers. And then they can bring their friends and they see that, hey, this actually isn't that intimidating. I've also noticed, being in Sydney now, I'm going to a lot of studios for my first time. And the instructors are incredibly welcoming of first timers. So I went to a cycling class yesterday in downtown Sydney, and the instructor is welcoming everybody. Like, we've got a lot of first timers in the class. Welcome. Please let us know if you need help setting up your bike. So they're making it really comfortable and welcoming and a really inclusive environment to show up for your first time.
On this, just moving on to the most popular day of the week, I found this really interesting, and I have no idea if there's a correlation to when people are required to come into the office. So I know a lot of companies are doing like a Tuesday, Thursday thing. And, to me, again, personally, when I took a lot of boutique classes, when I was riding SoulCycle, which I love to talk about a lot, I don't ride SoulCycle that much anymore, but I used to take the Survivor classes, which typically happen on the weekends, so Saturday Survivor, Sunday Survivor, and that's something that we do, and it would always get sold out. But here, and I'm wondering if this is a result of the pandemic and just people's behaviors, if people are taking more classes in the city when they're commuting to the city for work, or if they're just in the city and then potentially doing outdoor activities or other activities on the weekend. I mean, do you think that there's some correlation there? Because like Sunday was your coolest day, Saturday was the second coolest day, but Tuesday was your hottest day. So do you think, because ClassPass doesn't necessarily track outdoor stuff, unless you're tracking things like run clubs and stuff like that, but because ClassPass is typically based for indoor stuff, do you think that there's some truth to the fact that maybe on the weekends people are doing stuff more outside?
Absolutely. I also think like the weekends are, tend to be reserved for like family days. And, that's when you're kind of relaxing also with your kids, or, you got other plans. And so I do think the routine of going to work definitely gives way to sticking with your fitness routine. Now, as, Tuesday, I think is interesting. Like, we definitely have the Tuesday, Thursday go into the office. It's not a requirement, but sort of encouragement. And so that could have something to do with it. I also think like sometimes people have a hard time getting back into it on a Monday, after their weekend, like, oh, do I want to go to class on Monday at 6 a.m. or would I rather just book that Tuesday class? And so I think part of it is just like easing back in after the weekend. but I'm sure there has, something to do with their commuting into cities on Tuesdays, and that's the day that they sort of get back at it.
Yeah, I was also wondering on that one. That was one of my questions I had as well. Whether it was to do with particular age. I certainly know myself when I was younger, like the weekends used to be busy with social things, going out, and then Monday Monday was a tough day. Just getting through Monday after a heavy weekend was always tough, and so I also wonder whether that was different because as I'm older now, I kind of my weekends are slightly different and I have plenty of energy on a weekend and Saturdays and sometimes Sundays is my day to work out. So I was, wondering whether I hadn't thought about it from the perspective that Mo mentioned, but I also wonder whether there was something there to do with, kind of the age of the clientele as well. But
I will
kind of
add,
leads on to, go
I
on,
would
go,
also add
go,
is
Mo.
the age of your children. I think your kids are a little bit older. Kinsey and I have two very young kids. So for us, the weekends we're exhausted.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
Yeah.
because your kids are a little bit older, yeah, I was impressed, Kinsey, with your move and how you were juggling the move with two young children. So kudos to you on doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think like we've actually seen the ClassPass age demographic get a little bit older too. So ClassPass has been around, a little over 10 years now. And early on, it was a lot of like early 20s, people in their early 20s, women in their early 20s. And we've seen those people kind of like grow up with ClassPass. And now our demographic has shifted a bit older to more in their 30s. And I think part of that is just that people have stuck with ClassPass for a long time, but also that fitness is getting more expensive. It's expensive to go to a class now. And, while ClassPass does typically have discounted rates, we negotiate discounted rates with our partners. It still is, it costs some money to be able to frequent these classes. And so I think the demographic shift is also evidence of that.
One of the ones that interests me, and I was curious to know a little bit more, like from your perspective, is it says the role of, in terms of personalization and data, it said that body scan bookings rose by 159%, which would indicate some sort of desire for more insights and in terms of people's wellness decisions. What do you see? What do you take away from this? And how do you see fitness facilities could respond to some of that, particularly as it comes to boutique studios? Because in my mind, I wouldn't see a studio as a place where I'd necessarily go to get a scan. Not to say that a lot of them are not already doing that, but just curious to get your thoughts on that insight.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really smart for studios to take some of this data into consideration and to bring in body scans into their facilities. I mean, this is again something that I personally experienced at my studio that I frequented in Missoula, Montana. It was a cycling studio to begin with, then they added another room for strength training, and then they added another room where they did body scans and spray tanning. And it sort of became this like holistic experience where you could go there, you could take a cycling class, a strength training class, and then they also had 8-week programs where they would do a body scan at the beginning and at the end. And that was my first time ever doing a body scan, and it was because it was so accessible there in the studio that I was already going to. So I think a lot of users probably want to have that ability to go to a place where they're already comfortable going, get a body scan, be able to talk to one of the instructors about, what does this mean? How do I read all this data? And now how do I action it? Because that was what was most helpful for me. I didn't want to just get a body scan, have someone print it out, and then I go home and have to decipher what do these results mean? Now what do I eat? But being able to talk to somebody one-on-one and say, here's where you can actually make progress, here's where you want to focus on improvement, here's how you can change your diet to change these numbers, or change your workout regimen. And so I do think having that accessibility really goes a long way. And I think the reason that we've seen body scans go up a lot on ClassPass is, number one, people are interested in this more personalized data about themselves. But number two, that more and more studios are bringing that equipment in for people to be able to access that type of service.
For those of you who have not seen the report yet, I'd highly encourage you to do that. There's so many good insights. For example, I'm reading one here that says after running, people are most likely to book a yoga class, and it goes on and on. And some fun ones, like the most popular theme class was Taylor Swift. I could have guessed that. I don't know, Max,
Yeah.
if you would have guessed that too. So I think that was fun. So we will put a link to the report in the podcast notes. Kinsey, thank you so much for making the time work and calling in
Absolutely.
from us from Sydney, Australia.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing, Mo. So I think that like looking into 2025, one interesting trend that we're starting to see really pick up is also the community centered activities. So soccer, volleyball, ice skating. And I think this is really interesting too, because these are genres that we didn't always list on ClassPass, right? We were more focused on the boutique fitness experience or big box gyms. And now we're seeing some of these genres like volleyball and soccer, where it's like a team sport, you can actually book it through ClassPass. Paddleboarding is also one that you can book on ClassPass. So really interesting to see some of these taking off as well. And will be interesting to see what happens in 2025. But thank you guys so much for having me today.
Yeah, thanks very much for joining us, Kinsey. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who you think is valuable. Thank you very much for listening.